سی گردن ہوئی رسن سے جدا حسین یوں ہوئے اے مجھ رہی وطن سے جدا حسین درود پڑھیے محمد و آل محمد فاتحہ آج جناب آن و محمد کے حوالے سے ورثے کے چند بند آپ لوگوں کے پیش خدمت ہے نعرہ صلوات جب زخم کھا کے بنتے علی کے پسر گرے جب زخم کھا کے بنتے علی کے پسر گرے جلتی زمیں پر تشنا جگر خون میں تر گرے غل پڑ گیا کہ خاک پہ رش کے قمر گرے سن کر حسین قلب و جگر تھام کر گرے ہر عباس دل پہ داغے علم کھا کے رہ گئے جعفر کے پھول دشت میں مرجھا کے رہ گئے جعفر کے پھول دشت میں مرجھا کے رہ گئے باجے بجے سپاہے اردو میں جو ایک بار ڈیوڑی پہ آ کے کہہ گئے اکبر بحال ذات اے بیبیوں میری پھپھی اماں سے ہوشیار گرزوں سے فرق آن و محمد ہوئے فگار آئے تھے ہم بھی صرف خبر کے سنانے کو ارے جاتے شہ غریبوں کے لاشے اٹھانے کو خیمے میں یہاں تڑپتی رہی زینب لاشوں پہ بھانجوں کے وہاں پہنچے شاہدی دیکھا کہ غش ہے خواب پہ دونوں وہ مہجبی بہتا ہے خون بات کی طاقت ذرا نہیں ڈھالے گری ہے چھٹ کے دلوں کے ہاتھ سے قبضے مگر چھٹے نہیں شیروں کے ہاتھ سے، قبضے مگر چھٹے نہیں شیروں کے ہاتھ سے، شین ہلا ہلا کے پکارے شہ ہدا، ہر مامون سار ہوش میں آؤ، تو ایک ذرا کچھ حال دل سناتے ہوئے جاؤ، میں فدا یہ سن کے دونوں شیروں نے کیا کہ نیموا، اور دیکھا رخ امام تو گھبرا کے رہ گئے، یاد آ گئی وہ بات کہ تھرا کے رہ گئے، یاد آ گئی وہ بات کہ تھرا کے رہ گئے، مولا نے پیار سے کہا ہے یہ کیا کیا، لرزاں ہے جسم جس کس کا تمہیں ڈر ہے، میں فدا شہ کے قدم پکڑ کے پکارے، وہ مالقا دھڑکا ہمیں یہ ہے کہیں اماں نہ ہو خفا، اور زحمت ہوئی ماں میں فلک بارگاہ کو، اور سمجھے نہ وہ کہ ہم نے بلایا ہے شاہ کو، سمجھے نہ وہ کہ ہم نے بلایا ہے شاہ کو، جب زخم کھا کے بنتے، مولا کوئی غم نہ دے آپ لوگوں سوائے غم حسین کے، صلو علی محمد و آل محمد، اللہم صل علی محمد و آل محمد۔
Inshallah, we will continue our program. Tonight is the 6th lecture of the series of lectures that Maulana Hussain Walji has been delivering from this mimbar here. We are honored to have him here with us. Thought-provoking, insightful lectures, teaching us history, teaching us the message of Aba Abdullah. Maulana Walji has traveled the world extensively, delivering speeches, doing majalis, and giving the message of Aba Abdullah throughout the world. He has perhaps visited all continents where humans reside. So we are honored to have him here with us. Now I'd like to request Maulana Walji to come to the mimbar with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صل على محمد وآل محمد،
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد۔ One more salawat in the name of our 12th Imam, Imam Sahibul Asri wa Zaman. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله وبالله وصلى الله على محمد وآله وفوز أمري إلى الله. إن الله بصير بالعباد. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. لقد جاءت رسل ربنا بالحق والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم محمد. روحي وجسمي وارواح العالمين لك الفداء يا ابن رسول الله. ثم السلام عليكم يا أهل العزاء الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين وقاسم ابن الحسن ومسلم ابن عقيل وهاني ابن عروة وحبيب ابن مظاهر والهر الشهيد الرياحي. السلام عليكم يا ساداتي وموالي جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Tonight we are here to pay our condolences to Thania Zahra, Salamullah alayhi, meaning that she was the second to Fatima Zahra, Salamullah alayhi. There is a saying in Urdu, it says that Karbal ke safar mein agar hamsheer na hoti, Karbal ke safar mein agar hamsheer na hoti to Sham ke bazaar mein takreer na hoti. ज़ैनब के ही सदके से इस्लाम है बाकी, वरना इस्लाम की कोई तौकीर न होती. Tawqir means value. One of the most interesting thing was when she was standing in front of Ibn Ziyad, she made a beautiful statement that is in history today when she said, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. She had lost her brother, She had lost her children. She had lost all those who were close to her, including Hazrat Abul Fazl al-Abbas and Janabi Ali Akbar. But in spite of all that, she said, I've seen nothing but beauty. Why? Because she knew that each and every shahadat that happened on the land of Karbala was for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She was extremely close to Allah. When we look at her life has many lessons that we can learn. Man and woman can learn the lessons from Janab Zainab Salamullah alayhi. Very remarkable lady. This was when she was born. Right after the birth, Mawla Ali alayhi salam comes home and says to Janabi Fatima to Zahra Salamullah alayhi, that what have you named this girl? And Janabi Fatima said that how can I proceed before you? You tell me what is the name of this girl. And Imam Ali alayhi salam said, I don't have a name for her. The name will be now selected by the Holy Prophet. So when the Holy Prophet came and said, when he was asked, what about the name of this little girl? She said, it's not me. The name of this girl will be kept by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just the fact, imagine, just the fact that a name comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Jibreel Amin comes at that moment and tells the Holy Prophet that you should name her Zainab, the jewel of her father. Imagine. Why? Because she was representing her father in every way. As she was growing up, in every way, her salat was like her father. Her eloquence was like her father. She spoke like her father. She thought like her father. To the extent that our fourth Imam said that she never received any lessons from anybody. But the brilliance that she had, she was known as Akila. Akila means intelligent. That she was so intelligent. And this is not just said in the Shia books. This is also said in the Sunni books as to what extent Janab Zainab Salamullah alayhi's intelligence was. Unfortunately, when it comes to names, today the world is changing. The Muslims, if you ask them what is the name of your child, to be very frank, if you tell me once, fine, but if you tell me second time, I won't remember the name, because the names are very difficult. Why? Because we want to disseminate our children into the society. We don't realize that giving a name is such a beautiful privilege that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to the parents. It's a beautiful privilege. When you select a name, you don't go to Bollywood. You don't go to Hollywood to find a name. Or you don't go to NFL and NHL and all these organizations. Because there is popularity of that name in that place, you find that many families will name their children behind someone who's very popular. And if you don't find there, you Google. Most people today will Google the names. But Google doesn't tell you that such and such name belongs to a criminal. It doesn't tell you. Even Islamic names that you see there, it doesn't tell you. For example, the name of Sinan. Sinan is a name that is, today if you go into Google, you'll find Sinan. Who was Sinan in Islam? There were two people that were involved in the killing of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein when they cut his head off. One was Shimr Zil-Jawshan and the other was Sinan bin Anas. This child grows up not knowing what Sinan even means, and unfortunately we don't realize that the characteristics of the name becomes evident in the personality of a human being. It becomes evident because that shapes that individual many a times to the personality of that name. That is why in Islam we have 124,000 prophets. Imagine. That is 124,000 names. We have 14 ma'sumeens. We have 12 imams. We have 5 panjatans. But we are still trying to Google to find a name for my child. Now this is not for those of us who already have children, okay? It's too late now. If we have named them behind certain personality of Ahlul Bayt, we pray that their personality remains that, like of that Ahlul Bayt. If we haven't, then we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Ya Allah, guide my children on the path of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Children are the most precious thing we have, my brothers and sisters in Islam. Children are so important that they will create another generation. Just as we are here today, our parents were part of a community many years ago. Because of their efforts, we are here today. No matter how small of an effort that is. And many a times we run into trouble, right? Because there are two sons living in the same house, eating the same food, sleeping sometimes in the same room, but they turned out to be two different personalities. And this has happened to the imams. This has happened. You look at Shimr. Who was Shimr? He was related to the mother of Hazrat Abul Fazl al-Abbas. He was related. There were those who were on the opposite side of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam that had the blood of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. It happens. But what my and your effort should be is that we do everything possible that we can as parents to bring them up as a good spiritual human being. That is what we teach them. academic studies is very important, because even the Holy Prophet had encouraged men or women that they should get education, whatever education you can provide them, especially today for women, so she can stand up on her own feet. That she doesn't have to go begging around or seeking. Give her that much intelligence that if she has to rise up and stand up for justice, she will stand up for justice. That was the teaching. Many a times we worry about our wealth. When COVID came, many people were very much afraid. They had money. They could not spend it. Literally, there was a time. You look at your MasterCard bills and Visa bills. From the time COVID started, in the year COVID started, and then you look at it prior years, you'll find that you were spending the least amount of money. You don't know the situation with wealth. That is why when it came to Hazrat Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he said, make sure that wealth does not control you, that you control the wealth. And how does wealth control me? Because most people, more than 90% of the people in the world today are controlled by the wealth. I look at my bank statement, I look at my statement on my iPhone every morning. To do what? To make sure that I'm not losing a piece of my wealth, isn't it? Such a fact of life. I have seen people will tell me they get off the bed. The first thing they want to see is how's the stock market doing. We are in Arizona, right? 2 hours behind. Okay. So now I get up at even 6 o'clock in the morning and I know how the stock market is doing. Wealth controls us because it doesn't matter that in my stocks and bonds I lose $5,000 or $20,000 a year. Doesn't matter. You go to the person who is an expert in stock market, what is he going to tell you? Don't worry, just leave your money there. Just leave your money. It will come back again. But if somebody tells me that the center needs money, $5,000 or $3,000 or $2,000, or for the month of Muharram, because remember, no Imam has ever kept our money. None of them have. They've always returned to us 10 times more. But we don't realize, we don't even pay attention. And sometimes, yes, that stock market may have gone up for your sake, but you don't know what Imam may have done. You are the selector of where you want to put your money, right? But it is so important for us to understand that this wealth should not be controlling us. We should be able to control that wealth. Many times in the community when there is a discussion about donation, the husband and wife is wondering. This section is wondering, that section is also wondering. Isn't that sad? I want to give. Your niyat is, I want to give $100, $200, $500. And the poor guy who announces says, you know, we're short this much or whatever. And you are saying, you know what, I gotta give But then I'm waiting to see, what if my wife gives? And the wife is waiting, well, maybe my husband will already give it. And then we go home and both of us forget. Neither of us ever give anything. This is the irony of us. This is how wealth controls us. And if you look at Hazrat Abdullah ibn Ja'far, the husband of Janab Zainab Salamullah alayhi, he was known as a person who would even give up his own life, he said. And he was well known in Arabia that the wealth he had a lot of wealth. That he was known that if his wealth will end, he would also end up his life giving to someone. Why? Because all he had was, he was in the business of sheep. And he had gone to the Holy Prophet, and the Holy Prophet prayed. And he received so much wealth. But in spite of that, when it came to the mahar of Janab Zainab Salamullah alayh, Imam Ali alayhi salam asked for 500 of the dirhams of that time. And this is a big problem in our community today. Because many a times we don't understand what mahar is. Mahar, Quran says, is a gift to a woman. In the olden days, pre-Islamic era, there was mahar, but it was different. You look at in the Holy Quran, and you will find the story of Hazrat Musa. When Shoaib, the father of the girl to whom Hazrat Musa got married to, when Musa wanted to marry his daughter, Shoaib said that you have to give mahar. Mahar was in two forms, either financial form or you provide a service. Shoaib told Musa that I want you to work for me for 8 years. For that 8 years you will have my daughter. Today's, nobody is going to tell you, हमारे ससुर तो ये नहीं बोलेंगे ना कि भाई तुम हमारे लिए काम करो पहले, फिर उसके बाद मिलेगा आपको. He's not going to say work for me or then you are going to get my girl. No. All we have to do is give mahar. And so whenever I sit down with a couple that is getting married, I said, have you discussed your mahar? I asked the girl. Because I cannot recite nikah until mahar has been agreed. Cannot recite. So you ask the girl, have you decided about a mahar? And she will say, most of them will say, no, mere baba ne. Bhai, ye baba ki baat nahi hai. This is not a question about parents making a decision on the mahar of the child, that woman getting married. This mahar that we had in our own countries, which was known as dowries, is not mahar. That is a different thing altogether. But the basic thing is that you must give mahar. And mahar is that which that lady asks for. And it can be in a monetary value, or she can say, take me to Hajj, take me to Ziyarat. Do something beautiful between the two of you. But at the same time, mahar should be something that both of them can afford it. You ask for it, and you know that he does not have the money to do that. You can't ask for that kind of mahar. I was sitting once, and there was a lady from Australia, she was getting married to a reporter, Muslim reporter, Shia reporter. So they said, can you recite our nikah? I said, fine. Now, I hadn't met them. We were in the Zari room. And we were sitting, and I asked the girl, I said, what is the mahar that you want from this great person you have with you? She said, $1 million. And my heart nearly stopped. I felt sorry for that poor guy. $1 million? I said, so I had to turn over to him to ask him, is this something? He said, I can't even afford 100,000. She's talking about $1 million here. I can't even afford $1,000. I said, then both of you have to leave. And both of you will have to discuss. And I have to explain to you what is mahar. It's just a gift. It's a gift that you can ask for at the time of your nikah. And once that is done, there's no need for the person who recites the nikah to announce ki iska mahar itna hai. No, you don't have to announce any of that. It is strictly between the two of them. So it's very important, because all of this at the end comes down to wealth. It's all about wealth. And this is what Mawla Kainat is teaching us. That what is important is that you control your wealth. Don't let that wealth control you, or you will get into a lot of trouble. And so that is what we see in the life of Janab Zainab Salamullah alayhi. She marries Abdullah. Abdullah was the son of Ja'far al-Tayyar. The mother was Asma bint Umays. And what a great personality this woman was. I have to tell you that if there are certain personalities that we should have in our life, is personalities like Janab Zainab, Janab Fatima. You want to idolize someone and to become like that individual, then these are the personalities, not somebody in Bollywood. You understand? This is what's more important. That I pick some characteristics of these individuals and instill that in me, so that tomorrow, when my child grows up, I don't have to worry, because those characteristics will start to show up in your child. It will, because if you are living within the four walls, you know how many, when COVID happened, there are so many husbands and wives that are saying, I didn't even know my wife as much as I know in those 2 years that I was with her. You understand? Because both of them are at home, both of them need service from each of them. She didn't have any idea what he used to eat for lunch at work. And then suddenly he's at home, and now he's saying, can I do UberX or somebody, or Uber Eats? And can I order some? And the wife would say, is this the kind of stuff you are eating at lunch? She said, yeah, why don't you know? It's how would I know? You've been out for 20 years. I had no idea what you were eating at work. But being inside the home, what an opportunity we had as a family to build that bond with our spouses and with our children. What a great opportunity that was. And many people took advantage of that situation because of the fact that it was something they couldn't even imagine at one time. And now we were afraid of each other. How are we served food? If somebody found out that you had COVID, even if it was your wife, what would happen to you? You're going to quarantine. Inside that same house. They'd say, I don't want you to come here in the kitchen. You stay in that room, and they would isolate you. Now this COVID, of course, is different. But when we started, this is what was happening. That the woman or the man has to be, even if it is my son, I would tell that son, you have to stay away from me. This is how much we were afraid. This is called nafsa nafsi. You understand? Because this is what we are told. On the day of judgment will be a situation like that. Between us, our family members, our wives, our husbands, our children. It's all about me, it will become. So what is more important for us now is to establish a good, forgiving relationship. You build that forgiving relationship here, and you will see the fruits in the hereafter. Because you are such a forgiving individual. How many marriages are breaking in our community today at an extensive rate? Forget marriage, even engagement doesn't last that long. It just breaks. It breaks because there is personalities on both sides. And they will try to say, they will tell you, I didn't know that he had colorful teeth. Because of the water you drink, you come from certain countries, you start to build calcium on you. And then she doesn't know, she says, oh, ye kaisa hai? He's not even brushing his teeth. But you see, you run into all those kinds of issues today. And therefore, it is very, very important that you become a forgiving husband. You become a forgiving wife to each other. And the best ingredient for a good, powerful marriage is to make sure that you understand each other's needs and respect each other. That is very important. Once that happens, then you will sail along. And you will start to find that even your children. What was Janab Zainab? Here she, after the prayers that Janab Fatimatul Zahra Salamullah Alayha used to do. She used to be young. She used to come and sit next to her mom. And even Hassan or Hussein. Because Janab Zainab was born 5th year after Hijrah. Imam Hassan 3rd year after Hijrah. Imam Hussein 4th year after Hijrah. So they were very young. They would sit right next to mom. And her mother would raise her hand and do dua. And you know what Janab Zainab and the children used to say to Janab Fatima? Why are you praying for others? And Janab Fatima Zahra said, Al-Jar Summa Dar. First remember your parents, your neighbors, and then remember yourself. This is how concerned she was. That even when she raised, that is why we are told that when you are doing dua, remember others first. And once you have remembered others first, then pray for yourself and you'll see how quickly you'll get what you want. Don't be selfish in asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Ya Allah, this is what I want. First look at your brothers and your sisters and your parents. What are their needs? That is why there is this system right in ours. Ke bhai, mere liye dua karna. Why am I telling Naveed bhai to do my dua for me? Why am I telling him? Because he has not committed my sins. He's pure from my sins. Okay. Because he's pure, I ask him ke dua mein yaad karna. Why? Because then he can pray for me. I may have been sinful, but he hasn't committed my sins. Therefore, he's a masoom in that way. So he can ask for us. That is why we say to our friends and relatives, bhai dua mein hame yaad karna. So it is so important for us to remember that Hazrat Abdullah is a man who was born to Ja'far al-Tayyar and Asma bint Umays. You look at this lady's characteristics and the difficulties, my brothers, that she went through in her life. You look at Janab Zainab, she became an orphan at the age of 6 years of age. she lost her mother. You think it is easy to lose a mother at that age? And there was a beautiful attachment then between her and Mawla Ali alayhi salam. They were so closely attached that to that extent that in Masjid Kufa, when Ibn Muljim hit Imam Ali alayhi salam on the head, when he hit him, he still stood up. History doesn't say that he just collapsed. No, he stood up and he started to walk. Now, if you know the Masjid Kufa, if you have been there, you know where the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib was, right? You come out of Masjid Kufa, turn left and go towards his house. So he says to Imam Hassan and Hussein, you be on my side. And they were helping him. When they came outside, he could see the door of his house. And he says to Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, make me stand straight. And they asked, Baba, your condition doesn't allow for you to be able to stand straight. He said, I don't want Zainab to see me. Because Zainab will not be able to bear. That is why he was saying no, I don't want Zainab to see me. This was that relationship. And this is where Asma bint Umays also played a critical role. They moved to Ethiopia, to Abyssinia. And there was the king of Abyssinia who received them very well. And Hazrat Abdullah, while they were staying in Ethiopia, was born in Ethiopia. Hazrat Abdullah was born in Ethiopia. And Najashi, the king, loved the name so much of Abdullah that he named his own child Abdullah. Not only that, but he gave his own child, and it was Ja'far Tayyar, the husband of Asma bint Umays, the father of Hazrat Abdullah ibn Ja'far, that convinced Najashi to become a Muslim. And he became a Muslim by heart. He never wanted to show anybody, but inside he was a Muslim. He was a good Muslim to the extent that he gave his son, whom he named Abdullah, to Asma bint Umays and say, you feed her. And she fed. And both of those Abdullahs then became foster brothers of each other. This was Asma bint Umays. She loses her husband, and after 5 years, she marries Abu Bakr, the Khalifa. She gets a son out of, because she already had children, but she gets a son. And at that time, that son was named Muhammad ibn Abu Bakr. You know what his position is in Ahlul Bayt today? Even though he's the son of Abu Bakr. Who raised him? Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. He took the responsibility to raise him, and to raise him in such a way that we are told that on the day of judgment, Ahlul Bayt will call him by his name to be part of their family. That is the power of what Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam did to Muhammad ibn Abu Bakr. But they killed him ruthlessly. Ruthlessly. And that is the irony of the Muslim Ummah today, right? That their own Khalifa's children are killed, but they don't recognize that they were killed or anything. It's just like it's a forgotten history. To the extent that his body was put into a stomach of a donkey. This is how he was treated. But that is when she marries Abu Bakr. And within 2 years came the issue of Fadak. Now what does Asma bint Umays do? And if you look at history, I don't have the time to talk about it. But you look at history and it is amazing. that she stood by Janab Fatima Zahra Salamullah alayhi, no matter what her husband was standing for. Because she said, this is the truth. And I will be on the side of the truth. And she stood by. Within 5 years, Abu Bakr dies. And then she marries Mawlai Kainat, Hazrat Ali ibn Abi Talib. So not only was Asma bint Umays the mother-in-law, she became the stepmother of Janab Zainab Salamullah alayhi. Janab Zainab, she grows up in such a way that she is so close to her father that her father one day has her next to her and he used to teach her. And one day she's sitting and Imam Ali al-Islam asked her, Zainab, do you love me? She said, Baba, I love you. He said, do you love God? She says, of course I love God. And Imam Ali says, how can you have two love in a single heart? And she says, Baba, I love you because I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Big difference. Not only that, but Imam Ali alayhi salam was teaching her numbers. So Imam said, say 1. She said 1. Said, say 2. She remained quiet. Said, I'm telling you to say 2. He said, Baba, you have taught me 1 is for God and there is nobody else. So why should I say 2? This is the kind of relationship. That is why when it comes to Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, he said, if you have girls in your family, he's telling the fathers, have a dialogue with them. It is their right to have a dialogue with their father. When a girl is getting married in our community, what happens? Boy and a girl. And those of you who have had boys and girls getting married, you know what I'm referring to. Or what your parents may have done. What happens? Does anybody give any advice to the son? Absolutely not. You will be surprised. I would be surprised if the father takes his son for a cup of coffee and says, my son, these are the things you should try and understand and learn in a marriage. No. But everybody gives instruction to that girl. Everybody does, right? And she is told, ye karna, ye nahi karna, wo karna, ye karna, ye. What about the son? So he comes without any advice, and the girl comes with all the advice. Imagine. And then you can understand why there is a conflict between the two of them. So these are important values that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have taught us. That these are the values you should have for your children. Take the time to try and give advice. Your son has seen you with your wife for 30 years, and you're telling me that as a father I don't have any advice for my child. It cannot be. We have to sit down. We have to advise. When I speak about these kind of things, I get blamed. You know why? Because I have 3 daughters. People will come to me, अरे हुसैन भाई आप तो बच्ची, आपके यहाँ तो बेटा नहीं, आप क्या जानते हैं? मैंने कहा भाई ऐसी बात नहीं है. I am also concerned that my daughter will end up in a house or with a husband who has no advice at all from her father. And what is the one thing we do? When we go to the in-law after wedding, don't worry about your daughter. I'll take care of it. My daughter is your daughter, your son is my son. And believe me, it ends right there. There's no meaning to it sometimes, at all. So it is so important that we raise our children in such a way that if our own kirdar, if our own behavior, it is in the best of behavior, then the children will also gain those behaviors from you. This is what we see in the life of Janab Zainab Salamullah alayhi. That she not only loses her mother, she loses her father. She loses her brother Hassan Mushtaba. She loses Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. She loses her 2 children. But even then, she was the one that was consoling everybody. This was the irony. And Janab Zainab, when they left from Medina, Ono Muhammad were not with her. She left on her own. Why? Because there was an agreement that when she gets married to Hazrat Abdullah, Imam Ali alayhi salam had asked Janab Zainab, and Janab Zainab said that, Baba, make sure there is one thing they understand, that my husband understands. And what was that? That if Hussein goes on any sort of travel, then I will travel with him. So Hazrat Abdullah remembered that. When Janab Zainab comes and seeks his permission, he says, of course, it was my promise to your father, you can go. So she goes. She goes with Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. They reached Mecca. Until then, there was no Ono Muhammad. On the way to Kufa, they came to a stop because Hazrat Abul Fazl al-Abbas comes to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and says, there is a man, an old man who is coming behind. And Imam Hussein turns and finds out that that was Hazrat Abdullah ibn Ja'far. Why didn't he go? Do you know why he didn't go to Karbala? He could have gone because he was partially blind already. He could hardly see. But when he came near the tent of Janab Zainab, there were 2 children with him, with Hazrat Abdullah. He brings those 2 children, he goes into the tent of Janab Zainab. And Janab Zainab, immediately when she sees her husband, she says, have you come here to take me back? Because I'm not going back. And at that moment, Abdullah says, no, Zainab, I know. But your parents had always taught us that when you go on any kind of a trip, take out sadaqah. I have brought 2 sadaqahs for me and for you. One is my son, the other is your son. Both of them will die for the sake of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. If that ever comes, he said, make sure that before Ali Akbar, our sons are in the front line. He says, our sons should be in the front line. Janab Zainab. It is said that on the Ashur night, Imam Hussein is walking and observing all the different tents. He goes to the tent of Janab Farwa and she's preparing Janab Qasim. He goes to one tent where a lady says that I don't have any children. Who will die for me? At that moment, Abbas comes next to her and says to Kulsum, do not worry, I will be dying for your name on this land of Karbala. And when the time comes, he goes near the tent of Janab Zainab. Janab Zainab is combing the hair of her children with her fingers and said to her children, hope you are prepared. I am preparing you. You have the blood of Ja'far al-Tayyar. You have the blood of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I know you will be able to stand up and fight them. They had learned some of the tactics of fighting from Hazrat Abul Fazl al-Abbas. when they went, when the early morning of Ashura comes, Janab Zainab looks at her children and says, "You have not gone yet." And they said, "We did go to ask for permission by our uncle said, no, I cannot give you permission. You are the only children of my sister, you stay with her." And at that point, Janab Zainab takes the two children and walks over to Imam Hussain alayhi salam. When Imam looked at her sister coming with two children, he recognized and understood. And as Zainab came near, he says, "Give my children the permission, Ya Aba Abdullah. You are the Imam of my time. And you need help, and I'm willing to give my two children for your sake." We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that when Imam Zamana comes on this earth in front of us, that we have the heart and the soul to be with our 12th Imam, because he's the Imam of our time. Janab Zainab then goes back into the tent. Imam takes one child and puts him on the horse. Abbas takes the other child and puts him on the horse. And they give their farewell to the children. The children started to fight. But there was one thing Janab Zainab had instructed the children. She said, "I know you are both very strong in fighting. If you get to Furat, oh my children, do not drink a drop of water. Because my brothers, Ali Asghar and Sakina, are thirsty." At that moment, as they were fighting, somebody came and hit one child on the head so hard, he falls down. The other son got hit with a sword and he falls down. They started to call Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. It was Hussein's heart. Then he runs towards the battlefield along with Hazrat Abbas. They gathered the two bodies and brought them to the Khayma. Imam Hussein said to Zainab, "Oh Zainab, I have brought your two sons." History says that Janab Zainab came out. There was a separation between the two sons. She goes in the middle. She goes into sajda and she says, "Allah, Ya Allah, मेरी कुर्बानी कबूल करना, accept my sacrifice." She had her both hands on the heart of each of this child. Imam said, "Zainab, it looks like one of your son has not died yet. He's murmuring something. Bring your ear to his mouth." And you know what that young man asked his mother? "Oh, Mom, are you happy? We did not drink the water of Farah. Are you satisfied with us?" And he lost his life. History says that Janab Zainab used to control her tears so much that when Hazrat Abdullah asked her when she arrived in Medina, "Oh Zainab, I have heard you never used to cry." And Zainab said, "It was because of my brother Hussein. I did not want to make him feel that I have lost children and he hasn't." And this is why she used to control her tears when she came to Medina. History says at no point did she cry that much until she comes into her house. She enters the house. She sees two musallas. She goes and grabs both of these musallas and brought her the musallas to her heart. And she cried and she said, "Oh Muhammad, I miss you so." ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم بحق محمد وانت المحمود، بحق علي وانت الأعلى، بحق فاطمة وانت فاطر السماوات والأرض، بحق الحسن وانت المحسن، بحق الحسين وانت قديم الإحسان. إلهي توبة قبل الموت، وراحة عند الموت، ومغفرة بعد الموت، والنجاة من النار، ودخولا في الجنة، وعافية من كل بلاء الدنيا وعذاب الآخرة. ماتم حسين.
ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا،
ماتم حرم عباس کا،
ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا،
کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا،
ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا،
کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا،
ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا،
کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا،
ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا،
کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا،
ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا،
کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا،
ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا،
کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا،
ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا،
کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا،
ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا،
کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا،
ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا،
کرتے ہیں ماتم حرم عباس کا، ہو گیا
کربلا 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 جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، 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 روزائے شبیر پر دوں گا دعا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے
مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے
ہے جہاں گنجے شہیداں ہے جہاں نہر فرات ہے جہاں
گنجے شہیدہ ہے جہاں نہر فرات
جس جگہ سید میرا پیاسا رہا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے
کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے
جس جگہ جاگی تھی قسمت حر کی وہ دیکھوں گا میں جس جگہ جاگی تھی قسمت حر کی وہ دیکھوں گا میں آسیوں پر کیسے ہوتی ہے عطا لے چل مجھے جانے
والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے
اس قدر نادار ہوں دے سفر کچھ بھی نہیں اس قدر نادار ہوں دے سفر کچھ بھی نہیں دوش پر اپنے بٹھا کر اے حوالے چل مجھے جانے
والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے
جس جگہ عباس کے بازو قلم ہو کر گرے جس جگہ
عباس کے بازو قلم ہو کر گرے
اس جگہ میں بھی کروں ماتم ذرا لے چل مجھے جانے
والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے
جل گئے شام غریباں میں جہاں ہیں میں تمام جل گئے شام غریباں میں جہاں ہیں میں تمام جس جگہ ننا سائق جھولا جلا لے چل مجھے جانے
والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے
آئے وہ مقتل جہاں بالی سکینہ رات میں آئے وہ مقتل جہاں بالی سکینہ رات میں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی تھی سینہ باپ کا لے چل مجھے
جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے
سرور و ریحان ہر مجلس میں کرتے ہیں دعا سرور و ریحان ہر مجلس میں کرتے ہیں دعا حق وہیں روحوں کا اب ہوگا حوالے چل مجھے
جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے
جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے روزہ شبیر پر دوں گا دعا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے یا حسین 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 یثرب سے سو ہے کربلا ایک قافلہ رخصت ہوا سر پہ علم سایہ فگن غازی کی آتی ہے صدا پہلا سفر زینب کا ہے سنسان کر دو راستہ کارواں کارواں آپس میرے کارواں 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 آپس میرے کارواں 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 آپس میرے کارواں کیا شان ہے کیا دبدبا کیا لوگ ہیں قرآن ماں صلی اللہ آیات کا یہ قافلہ مشک و علم ان کا نشان بس میرے کارواں کارواں عباس میرے کارواں اللہ کے پیارے ہیں آل نبی سارے ہیں قرآن کے پارے ہیں کونین کے تارے ہیں زیر قدم ہے آسمان آپس میرے کارواں کوئی شبیہ ہے مصطفیٰ کوئی حسن کا دل ربا ہے کوئی عکس سیدہ ہے شبیر کا یہ قافلہ تام علم جو ہے جوان آپس میرے کارواں عباس وہ کردار ہے باد علی سالار ہے ایسا علم بردار ہے میدان میں تلوار ہے پھر بھی علم کا پاسبان عباس میرے کارواں جب شام پہنچا قافلہ خطبہ یہ زینب نے دیا سن لے یہ قوم اشقیاء ہم ہیں بنا لا الہ کشتی ہے دی ہم باسباں عباس میرے کارواں
یا حسین یا حسین ماشاء اللہ سب مل کے مومنین یا حسین
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین
یا حسین 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 یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین جب رضا سر سے چھنی جب رضا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی جب رضا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا بغیر ماتم کے سب مل کے ماشاءاللہ بغیر ماتم کے صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ ماشاءاللہ اور آل عمران کہاں اور یہ زندان کہاں یہ بہن قید ہوئی ماشاءاللہ مومنین سب مل کے تو نہ آیا غازی جب رضا سر سے چنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی آل عمران کہاں اور یہ زندان کہاں یہ بہن قید ہوئی سر سے چنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی اور ہم کو پانی نہ ملے تیری خوشبو تو رہے تیرے بازو نہ کٹے چاہے مشکی سچ دے یہ مگر ہو نہ سکا یہ مگر ہو نہ سکا تیرے بازو ہے جدا مجھ پہ ہے تشنا لگی جب رضا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی جب رضا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی ہر دھوپ میں تو تھا شجر تجھ سے آباد تھا گھر ہے برہنا میرا سر کیا نہیں تجھ کو خبر ہے علمدار وفا اس بہن کو باخدا تجھ سے ڈھارتی بڑی جب رضا سر سے چنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا ماشاءاللہ مومنین سب مل کے جب رضا سر سے چنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی آ گئی شام علم رک گئے اہل حرم پیٹ پر جلتی ہوئی ہو گیا ٹھنڈا علم پرسہ دینے کے لیے مجھ سے ملنے کے لیے آ گئے بابا علی رضا سر سے چنی
میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی،
جب رضا سر سے چنی
میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی۔
ارے کیا کہوں شعر میرے رضا ہم کو لیے، یہ مسلمان سارے شہر در شہر پھرے، خلقت کوفہ کبھی خلقت شام کبھی، بارہا ہم پہ ہنسی جب رضا سر سے چنی
میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی،
جب رضا سر سے چنی
میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی۔
اور کتنی بے بس تھی بہن اے شہنشاہ وفا، نام لے لے کے میرا جب یہ ظالم نے کہا، ناز تھا تجھ پہ تجھے اب بلاؤ نہ اسے، اور میں روتی رہی جب رضا سر سے چنی
میں صدا دیتی رہی
تو نہ آیا غازی، جب رضا سر سے چنی
میں صدا دیتی رہی
تو نہ آیا غازی۔ قید خانے میں قضا جب سکینہ کو ملی، لے کے کرتے کا کفن بچی دفنائی گئی، اس گھڑی نام تیرا صورت نعت علی دیکھ دہراتی رہی جب رضا سر سے چنی۔ ماشاءاللہ مومنین، مولا سلامت رکھے آپ کے سینے قائم رہیں۔ نایا غازی جب رضا سر سے چنی
میں صدا دیتی رہی
نایا غازی، دھوپ میں تو تا شجر تجھ سے آباد تا گھر، اے برہنا میرا سر کیا نہیں تجھ کو خبر، اے علمدار وفا اس بہن کو باخدا تجھ سے ڈھارسی بڑھی جب رضا سر سے چنی میں صدا دیتی رہی ماشاءاللہ تقریباً جب رضا سر سے چنی
میں صدا دیتی رہی
تو نہ آیا اور رویا ریحان قلم کر کے یہ بات رقم، خون میں ڈوب گیا میرے غازی کا علم، زخمی زینب کا جگر خوف شاشا کا سر، آئے خیموں میں شقی جب رضا سر سے چنی
میں صدا دیتی رہی
تو نہ آیا غازی، جب رضا سر سے چنی
میں صدا دیتی رہی
تو نہ آیا غازی، جب رضا سر سے چنی
میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی۔
یا حسین یا حسین Hussein, Ya 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 Hussein,
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان. الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أنصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وأينا حتى تسكنه أرزك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Can I request the ladies on the other side, can you please close the curtain so that men can go for the ziyarat of the Khana? Sallu ala